uh, he announced the intention for the U.S. to become involved. It was an interesting announcement, become involved in Gaza. And let's just go ahead and bring Joel and Natasha in, the co-hosts and co-founders of America's Roundtable radio program. Been a while, guys. How you doing?
It's great to see you again, Dave, and thank you so much for inviting us on SuperTalk Mississippi Media.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to see you.
Well, this is a big week, and I was prefacing it, you probably heard, with the announcement that President Trump made when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was at the White House about America's intention to get involved in the Gaza Strip situation and basically go in, take it over, relocate the Palestinians, and rebuild it into something else. I want to get your thoughts and your take on this entire situation as it unfolds.
Right. It's certainly a game changer, not just only for Israel and its neighbors, but for the entire region. In fact, as Secretary Pete Hegseth said, it's out of the box thinking. It changes the dynamic, it changes the paradigm significantly, because for the longest time, what we have been doing as Americans, as a U.S. government, is engaging with Palestinian Authority, which is very corrupt. And then on the other side, Hamas was actually governing Gaza. So at this time, what President Trump has presented, which also Secretary Marco Rubio has suggested as a very generous deal and a game changer, is to be able to look at Gaza with a different set of lens, seeing how the people could be moved out of Gaza while there is significant work being done. We don't have a lot of the key details yet, but from what we gather, the president has communicated that at this stage, we do not need boots on the ground. So this is something that will engage Arab partners. And I think they have a responsibility. You know, they're talking about the Palestinian cause and all of that. But for decades, what we've seen is these groups attacking Israel, you know, from within Gaza, rockets fired constantly into Israel. From Lebanon, we see the Hezbollah, which is very much weakened, and also Syria and Iran. So this is a unique time in history. It's an opportunity for us to rethink all that's happening in the Middle East and present bold new ideas. So it is certainly possible.
Well, and that was my next question, because there are plenty of stumbling blocks in the way. And I want to circle back around in a minute to what you said about looking at this from a different angle, because I think that is probably the most important part of this entire thing, if you ask me. But the relocation of the Palestinians, the first major hurdle that a lot of people have pointed out is, will they go?
Right. That's a question. But when you think about the common sense, that's the whole area is completely distracted. I mean, there's a debris, there are unexploded bombs, there's some 500 kilometers of underground tunnel structure that were built for the purpose of sheltering Hamas that can attack Israel at any time. So when you think on the other side, if this piece of land was somewhere where there's rule of law and protection of property rights, people would enjoy living in a coastal area of tourism. I mean, they would be very entrepreneurial. There would be a possibility to build that piece of land to become such a beautiful tourist destination with other adjacent hospitality parts. So basically, it's a pity that this cannot be used as such. But when you think about, again, destruction that is complete, I think that's the best common sense solution, to get people out, but for the promise to bring them back. And you bring back people that have not done any harm, that have not been involved in any criminal activities, in any terrorist activities. So you would have to vet these people to come back, to get a new generation of individuals that can perhaps govern themselves and have free elections and gradually establish the rule of law and protection of property rights with the help of America, Israel, our Arab countries, our Arab allies in the region. So I think it is a very common sense solution.
Well, and from the outside looking in, it's a no-brainer, especially and partially. I think there may be a framing problem here in terms of the entire discussion. If you're going to have your house completely fumigated and remodeled, you move out for a while. That's the most efficient, easiest way to get things livable again. That's the situation that we're talking about here, and that's kind of the process that we're talking about. I just haven't heard it put in those terms yet, but that I think makes it a bit more relatable to the general population as to what's going on here. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, Dave. I think you've framed it in that correct position, meaning that in order for a rebuilding effort to take place and to detonate these bombs that are still, that were in the possession of the Hamas group, all the explosives and things of the nature, as Natasha mentioned, these hundreds of kilometers that are tunnels underneath that ground. I mean, someone needs to go in and really work on a rebuilding of that section in Gaza that holds Gaza Strip, work on infrastructure. And as you've rightfully mentioned, it is not possible to do so when you have a population of nearly 1.8, 2 million people right in that vicinity. And Jordan, Egypt, and other countries have an opportunity, if they are serious about helping the Palestinian people, if they are serious about seeing peace and prosperity come to this region, if they are serious to seeing a new chapter being drawn, then this is that moment, that unique opportunity in history to doing so. All this time there have been rhetoric about let's help the Palestinian people. And I think as we look back, this is that rare opportunity that we see in the Middle East to bring about lasting peace. If we're able to see a real rebuilding done, people that have a genuine interest, like Natasha mentioned, of coming back to contribute to the prosperity of that region, great things can happen. I mean, investments will pour in from around the world for this extraordinary coastal section of the Mediterranean. I mean, it's just a beautiful spot, but it's tragic that a terrorist group has held hostage an entire population, and we've got to look at new approaches in solving problems.
It's amazing how things have changed in just a couple of weeks. My entire life, we have talked about the concept of peace in the Middle East, and now we're discussing details of the plan. That's a complete shift from the focus of the conversation. We're going into a break. When we come back, we'll continue to talk about that and about what has led to that shift and how we're focusing on it. And the point of it, I think, is Joel and Natasha from America's Roundtable radio program. We'll continue with them on SuperTalk Mississippi on middays in the Element Wealth Studios next. Well, Studios, Dave Hughes here. We have Joel and Natasha with us from America's Roundtable radio program. And, it's amazing how much action you can get by making an out-of-the-box suggestion to come up with an idea that no one has thought of. But I think that is kind of the point of this. We have to start thinking of things in a different way if we want to have different results than we've had for the past several centuries. Let's be honest at this point.
Right. And as you mentioned, basically during the first Trump administration, we came to the Abraham Accords. So peace agreements between first-time Arab nations of United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan that joined with Israel to sign peace agreements. And it was at that time that when Saudi Arabia was approaching signing of the agreement that Hamas attacked. So we wouldn't have been in this situation today about talking about what to do with Gaza Strip if it wasn't for Hamas, terrorist organization, attacking Israel on October 7, killing 1,200 people and injuring thousands and hundreds of thousands of people being displaced, followed by a Lebanese side Hezbollah attack. So basically, all this that we're talking about is now where we were 4 years ago. So if we had not changed the administration, I believe we would not have these atrocities and came to this point where we are today. So instead of talking as we did 4 years ago, Saudi Arabia joining. We have a peace agreement. We continue with prosperity, trade, and investments without wars. We are here today with Gaza Strip destroyed. Basically, we need to do something about it. And as you say, out-of-box thinking is the right thing to do. We shouldn't have been in this position in the first place.
Well, and that I think you bring up an excellent point, Natasha. There is a tendency among some people in America, especially the liberals, to blame the victim. That happens on a regular basis. We see that unfold in stories all the time, and that's kind of what they've tried to do here, because you do have to remember facts are facts. There's no way to get out of it. This all began because of the terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7th. As a result, you don't then get to turn around and blame the people that are defending themselves for doing something horrible and wrong. That just it turns the world on its head, I think, and that's wrong.
Absolutely, David. If I could just take a brief moment to share with you a quote from Yaakov Katz, the former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, and when he said, Trump's goal may not be to actually take over Gaza, but to shake the world out of its complacency. For too long, the international community has enabled Hamas and other radical groups by clinging to outdated conventions. The world's half-hearted responses to Hamas attacks on Israel, calling for Israel to moderate its response after terrorists murdered, kidnapped, and raped, have emboldened terror. This is precisely what Trump is challenging. And then he goes to just say, within just a few sentences, Trump upended decades of American policy and shattered the conventional thinking that had governed the Israel-Palestinian conflict for generations. In doing so, he forced a reckoning with the status quo that the world had long ignored, unquote.
And
we
my
have a
favorite
different
part of this. Yeah, go ahead, Natasha. Go ahead.
No, I think it's a different Middle East now. Basically, Israelis dealt with Hamas in Gaza Strip, with Hezbollah in Lebanon, attacked Iran directly after they received numerous rockets and missiles, direct attack from Iran to Israel. So dealt with Iran, destroyed their missile defense system, which was provided by Russia. So we have a new Middle East. Basically, all major enemies, terrorist groups are halfly or fully destroyed. And this is the time to restart the peace agreements.
I think you're exactly right. And we're just about out of time. I didn't even get into something that has not really hit the press very much. Some actions and orders taken by the Trump administration putting enormous restrictions on Iran. Ordering it to have nothing to do with finance in Iraq, having to do with actually other countries putting into place the know your customer's customer rule for people that deal with finance. It's a complicated subject. We don't have time to get into it right now, but I find it fascinating that no one's really talking about that, it seems.
Exactly, and it's something that certainly needs to be elevated to a higher level. In fact, the Trump administration has now advanced key initiatives that will hold Iran to account, and it should have been done. And if we had done that properly, we would not be in the mess we're in today. And certainly, heaven help us all, in this case, but we are certainly pleased to see that the Trump administration is doing the right thing, and it's protecting not only people in the region, but Americans.
And we just need to pay attention that European countries abide by that, because it wasn't the case in the past.
That's exactly right. We can't continue to try things the way we've always tried them and assume they're going to work differently this time. And that's the movement here. Guys, we could do 2 hours on this. I swear we could, but we're out of time for now. I thank you so much, Joel and Natasha. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. Don't miss America's Roundtable radio program right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. We've got news from Fox and SuperTalk Mississippi News next.
Thank you so much.